5 months. It seems like a short time, but when you're married and life starts to feel like a fairy tale, you don't expect something so simple to crumble so quickly. I always thought our love was unbreakable, that mistakes would be just small stumbles, easily overcome. I never imagined that the worst decision of my life would be made in less than 2 hours, and that those 2 hours would be enough to destroy everything we had built together. I remember our honeymoon like it was yesterday. His gaze, full of hope, his smile, innocent, without doubt. We were happy, genuinely happy. There was no reason for me to think about anything other than him, our home, our future. But sometimes, life puts us in front of choices we never imagined we'd have to make. A message on Instagram. Just that. An innocent exchange of words. A small moment of attention that I thought wouldn't hurt. And that's when everything started. That day, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. The excitement of being noticed, of being desired by someone who wasn't my husband. I didn't know, but this small slip-up would become an open door to chaos. When I accepted the invitation, when I entered that motel, when I left the world outside behind, I knew I was doing something wrong. But the pleasure, the adrenaline, the feeling of freedom blinded me completely. I lost myself in something that had no return. When I got home, my husband already knew. He didn't shout. There were no words of anger, just sadness. And in that moment, I realized that everything I thought was secure was destroyed. Have you ever felt like that? At rock bottom, when you realize that what you love most has been lost due to a mistake you can barely understand. Stay with me, because the story I'm about to tell could be the most painful of my life, but it's also a lesson you won't want to miss. If you've been through something like this or know someone who has, subscribe and leave a like. Don't miss a single detail of this story. As the weeks passed, something began to shift between us. The healing wasn't instant, and it certainly wasn't perfect, but it was real. Slowly, the walls we had built around our hearts began to crumble. I could feel the distance between us narrowing, day by day. There were still moments of doubt, still days when the past would rear its ugly head, but we had both made a commitment to move forward, together. It wasn't just about what we had gone through, it was about what we were willing to build now. The trust we had started to rebuild wasn't flawless, but it was enough to keep us moving forward. And that was all we could ask for. We learned to take things one step at a time. We learned to listen to each other, to communicate in a way we never had before. The small things that we used to take for granted, holding hands, sharing a laugh, or simply being present, became the foundation of our relationship again. Every day felt like a small victory. Every day felt like we were creating something new, something stronger, something that was ours. And yet, even in the quiet moments, the fear still lingered. It was always there, waiting in the background, reminding me of the fragility of love. I had to push it aside, to tell myself that no matter how uncertain the future seemed, we were still here, still fighting for each other. And that was enough. We both knew that our past was a part of us, but it didn't define us. What defined us now was our willingness to grow, to learn, to adapt. We weren't the same people we were before the struggles, before the pain. We had changed, but that change wasn't a sign of weakness. It was a sign of strength. We had both faced our fears, our insecurities, and together, we had chosen to move forward. It was scary, uncertain, and sometimes overwhelming, but it was also beautiful. The thought of the future didn't seem so daunting anymore. I no longer feared what might come because I knew that whatever happened, we had each other. We had love, we had hope, and we had the strength to face anything. And that, to me, was enough. I looked at him, and for the first time in a long time, I truly believed that we had a future. Not a perfect future, not an easy one, but one that was worth fighting for. The road ahead wasn't clear, but it didn't need to be. We would walk it together, hand in hand, knowing that no matter what came our way, we would face it as a team. And that made all the difference. If you've ever been in a situation where you had to forgive someone, where you had to choose whether to move forward or walk away, I'd love to hear your story. Share your thoughts in the comments below. How did you handle it? What did you learn from it? Your story might be the one that helps someone else who's struggling with the same decision. And if you're moved by this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to stay updated on more emotional journeys like this one. Trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next. And don't forget to check out the playlist in the comments below. There are some incredible stories waiting for you. I spent the whole night awake, the weight of everything crushing me like a ton of bricks. I couldn't stop replaying the scene in my head. The way he looked at me with those eyes full of disbelief, the way his silence spoke louder than any words could. I thought I knew how it felt to lose something important, but nothing compares to the feeling of realizing you lost someone's trust forever. There was no anger in him, just a quiet sorrow that seemed to pierce my soul. And in that silence, I saw the full extent of the damage I'd caused. It wasn't just the betrayal. It was the fact that I had torn apart something that I never thought I could destroy. We had built a life together, a future, and I destroyed it with a single, foolish act. My mind kept spiraling, questioning everything I'd done, every choice that led me to that motel room, every moment I chose to ignore the love I had in my life. I wanted to blame him for something, anything, just to take the focus off me, to make myself feel less guilty. But I couldn't. He hadn't done anything wrong. I had. That realization hit harder than anything else. I wasn't just an adulterer. I was a liar, a hypocrite. I had looked him in the eyes, promised him forever, and then shattered that promise without a second thought. How could I have done that? How could I have let my own selfish desires outweigh the love we shared? The tears I held back finally began to fall, and they didn't stop for hours. I cried for the woman I had become, the woman who had betrayed her husband, the woman who had destroyed everything she loved. I cried because I knew I had lost him, and I wasn't sure I could ever find my way back. I don't know how much time passed, but by the time I finally closed my eyes, it felt like an eternity had gone by. When I woke up the next morning, the reality of the situation hit me again. I was still alone, and he was still gone. I tried to reach out to him, but he didn't answer. I called, I sent messages, I begged him to talk to me, but there was no response. It felt like I was invisible to him. I had become a stranger, someone unworthy of his time, his love, his attention. And honestly, I didn't blame him. How could he look at me and not see the mistake I'd made, the destruction I had caused? He had every right to walk away. I didn't expect him to come back. Not now, not after what I had done. But somewhere deep inside me, I still hoped. I still prayed that somehow he would find it in his heart to forgive me, that we could rebuild what was broken. I didn't know how to fix this. I didn't know how to make it right, how to earn back the trust one had lost. But I knew I couldn't give up without at least trying. I couldn't live with myself knowing that I didn't do everything I could to make it right. But the question that haunted me, that kept me up at night, was whether or not he even wanted to try. Was he even thinking about me? Was there still any love left in his heart, or had I completely destroyed it? I couldn't bear the thought of losing him, of losing us. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that the answer wasn't up to me. It was up to him. And maybe, just maybe, he would find a way to forgive me. But I couldn't count on that. I had to face the possibility that I had destroyed everything, and there might be no coming back from it. My heart ached, my chest heavy with the weight of regret, but I also knew that whatever happened next, I had to face it. I had to own what I did, no matter how hard it was. It wasn't about finding a way back to him, it was about finding a way back to myself. And that was the hardest part of all. Days passed, and I found myself sinking deeper into a sea of doubt and guilt. I tried to fill the emptiness with anything I could, friends, distractions, work, but nothing worked. It wasn't that I didn't want to get better. It wasn't that I didn't want to heal. I just couldn't escape the overwhelming feeling that I had ruined everything beyond repair. I looked at myself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back at me.
Who was she?
The person who made a mistake so huge, so unforgivable, that it destroyed the one thing she loved most? The person who betrayed the trust of the man who had given her everything? I felt like a stranger to myself. The reflection I saw was someone filled with shame, guilt, and regret. The woman who once believed in love, in forever, in the promise of a future shared with someone she trusted completely. Now she was just a broken version of herself, a woman who had let her impulses dictate her fate. And that was what ate at me the most. The fact that I had made a choice, a decision, and I couldn't take it back. I couldn't undo what I had done. I could try to apologize, to make amends, but that wouldn't change what had already happened. Nothing could change the fact that I had hurt him, and nothing could undo the betrayal I'd caused.
I knew that now.
I also knew that I couldn't keep living like this. I couldn't keep drowning in my own sorrow, hoping that somehow he would come back, that somehow things would go back to normal. Because, deep down, I knew they wouldn't. He had every right to walk away from me. Every right to never speak to me again. And honestly, I didn't blame him. I couldn't. But as the days dragged on, I began to realize something else. Something that hurt just as much. I had stopped living for myself. All I could think about was him. All I could think about was what I had done.
But what about me?
What about the woman I had to find again? The woman who had lost herself in the process of trying to keep everything together? What about the person who needed to heal, to understand why she had made the choices she did, to rebuild her life from the rubble of her own mistakes? I couldn't keep living in the past. I couldn't keep replaying that one night, that one decision, over and over in my mind. I had to stop punishing myself, even if he never forgave me. I had to stop blaming myself, even if I was the one who was wrong. But that didn't mean I was giving up on him or on us. It just meant I had to find a way to live with the consequences of my actions, and that wasn't going to be easy. I had to learn to forgive myself, even if I wasn't sure I could ever truly be forgiven. But no matter what, I knew I had to try. I had to try to heal, to grow, to understand why I had made such a terrible mistake, and to use that knowledge to rebuild myself. I had to take responsibility for what I had done, no matter how painful it was. But the hardest part was accepting that I might never get the chance to make things right. That I might never get the chance to look him in the eyes again and tell him how sorry I truly was. That I might never get to fix what I had broken. And that thought haunted me every waking moment. It haunted me because as much as I wanted to make things right, I knew that some things can't be undone. Some things can't be fixed. And that was the cruel reality I had to face. There was no guarantee that things would get better. There was no guarantee that he would come back. There was no guarantee that the love we once had could ever be restored. And that was something I would have to live with for the rest of my life. I don't know what the future holds, or if there's any hope for us. All I know is that I have to live with the consequences of my actions, and whatever comes next, I have to face it with the strength to move forward. Even if I don't have all the answers, even if I don't know what the next step is, I have to keep going.
For me. For him.
For what we once had. And for whatever might come next, no matter how uncertain it is. The days started blending together. One morning, I woke up and felt like everything was the same, like the world was moving around me, but I was stuck in place, unable to move forward. I tried to keep busy, but the more I did, the more I realized how empty it all felt. Every time I thought of him, every time I remembered how he used to look at me with that love in his eyes, it was like a stab to my heart. The memories of us together, laughing, planning our future, seemed so distant now. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had lost something irreplaceable, something I could never get back. It was like watching a dream slip away, piece by piece. And it wasn't just the loss of him that hurt. It was the loss of who I was. I had lost sight of myself in the process of trying to hold everything together. I had become so focused on trying to make the relationship work, on trying to be perfect, that I forgot about the most important thing of all, myself. Somewhere along the way, I had stopped listening to my own needs, my own heart, and I had let myself slip into a place of complacency. I didn't want to admit it, but I had ignored the small things that had started to bother me. I had ignored the doubts, the warning signs, the little cracks in our relationship. Instead of facing them, I buried them, hoping they would go away. But they didn't. They only grew bigger, and when the mistake finally happened, it was like everything just came crashing down. I had broken something that was never meant to be broken, and now I was left to pick up the pieces. I don't know how long it will take to heal from this, or if I ever will. I don't know if I'll ever get the chance to fix things with him, or if I even deserve to. But what I do know is that I can't keep living like this. I can't keep replaying the past in my mind, wishing I could go back and make different choices. I can't keep letting guilt control me, let it dictate every decision I make. I need to move forward, even if I'm not sure how. I need to find a way to forgive myself, even if he can't forgive me. I need to learn from my mistakes and maybe, just maybe, find a way to grow from them. I don't know if he will ever come back. I don't know if he will ever be able to look at me the same way again. But I have to believe that there's still hope. Hope for healing. Hope for redemption. Hope that, someday, I'll be able to look at myself in the mirror and see someone worthy of love again. But for now, all I can do is wait. Wait and hope that, in time, the pain will fade and the lessons will remain. Because even though I may have lost him, I haven't lost myself. And that, in the end, is what matters the most. I've learned more about who I am through this pain than I ever thought possible. And even if he never comes back, I will carry those lessons with me, forever changed. Maybe that's the only way to move forward. Not by focusing on what I lost, but by accepting who I've become and taking responsibility for the choices I made. I can't undo the past, but I can shape my future. And that's what I need to focus on now. I need to rebuild my life, piece by piece, starting with myself.
It won't be easy.
It won't happen overnight, but I have to start somewhere. And I'm starting now. The weeks continued to drag on, each one feeling heavier than the last. I tried to focus on the things I needed to do, work, daily routines, maintaining some semblance of normalcy, but it was hard. Every moment, every step I took felt like I was walking in a fog, as if I were trapped in a world where nothing felt real anymore. I kept thinking about him, about what I had done, about the life we had shared that now seemed like a distant memory. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had ruined everything. It was as if I was constantly running away from my own mistakes, trying to outrun the guilt that was chasing me. But no matter how far I went, it was always there, lurking, waiting to catch up with me. The hardest part, though, wasn't just the guilt. It was the silence. The silence between us, the silence in the house, the silence in my heart. It was deafening. I missed him in ways I couldn't describe. I missed the way he used to look at me, the way he would hold me, the way we used to talk for hours about our future. But now, all of that was gone.
And it was my fault.
I couldn't change the past, no matter how much I wanted to. No amount of apologies could undo what I had done. But there were moments when I still held on to hope, foolishly perhaps, but I couldn't help it. There were moments when I thought that maybe, just maybe, he might come back. Maybe he would see how sorry I was. Maybe he would understand how deeply I regretted what I had done. But then the reality would hit me again. He wasn't coming back. And that was the hardest pill to swallow. The man I loved, the man I had promised my life to, was now a stranger. The thought of him moving on, of him finding happiness without me, was more painful than I could bear. I didn't deserve his forgiveness, I knew that. But it didn't stop the ache, the deep longing I felt every time I thought of him. I had let him down. I had betrayed him in the worst possible way, and now I had to live with the consequences. But even in the darkest moments, I couldn't give up on the idea that maybe I could change. Maybe I could become someone worthy of love again, someone worthy of his forgiveness. I didn't know how or when, but I had to believe that it was possible. I had to believe that there was still a chance for me to rebuild my life, even if it wasn't with him. The road ahead seemed long and uncertain, but I couldn't stop now. I had to keep going. Not for him, not for anyone else, but for me. I had to learn how to forgive myself, how to accept what I had done and move on. I had to find a way to live with the regret, without letting it consume me. I had to find a way to make peace with my past so I could finally move forward. But I knew that wasn't going to be easy. Forgiveness, true forgiveness, was something I had to earn, not just from him, but from myself. I had to prove to myself that I was capable of change, that I was capable of learning from my mistakes. And that journey, that path to healing, would be long and difficult. I wasn't sure where it would take me, but I had to start somewhere. The truth was, I had been running away from myself for too long. I had been ignoring the parts of me that needed healing, the parts of me that needed to grow. I couldn't keep hiding from my mistakes, from the person I had become. I had to face it all. I had to face the shame, the guilt, and the pain. I had to face the reality of what I had done and then find a way to move on. It wasn't about forgetting what had happened. It wasn't about erasing the past. It was about accepting it and learning from it. And that, I realized, was the only way forward. I couldn't keep looking back at what I had lost. I had to look ahead at what I could still gain. It was time to stop being a prisoner of my past and start becoming the person I was meant to be. I wasn't sure what the future held or if he would ever forgive me, but I knew one thing for sure. I had to keep moving forward. I had to keep fighting for myself. And that was the only way I would ever find peace. The weeks dragged on, and with them, the pain turned into a constant weight. I was trying to rebuild myself, trying to find a way to move forward, but each day the absence of him became more unbearable. Everything I did seemed insufficient. I tried to distract myself with work, with friends, but whenever I was alone, the emptiness inside me grew even bigger. The guilt was a burden I couldn't shake off my shoulders, a cruel reminder that I had destroyed something precious. I looked toward the future and could no longer see the same hope that had once guided me. The promises I made, the dreams we shared, everything seemed to crumble before me, and there I was, standing still, not knowing how to rebuild what I had torn apart. How could I rebuild the trust one had broken in a moment of weakness? How could I look at him and ask for forgiveness when I knew it would mean nothing anymore? The truth was that what hurt the most wasn't just losing him, but the fact that I had lost myself. The woman I was before this, the one who believed in second chances, in new beginnings, now seemed like a distant, unrecognizable version of myself. I didn't know how to go back to being who I was. And in many moments, I felt lost, unsure of what my next step would be, not knowing where to start. I didn't know how to tell him how sorry I was, nor how to make him understand the pain I was feeling. And more than that, I didn't know how to somehow keep living with this guilt. How could I live knowing I had hurt someone I loved deeply, knowing that trusting me would never be the same again? Time passed, and the question that always lingered was, would he ever come back? Would he forgive me? Would he look at me and see the woman he once loved? Or would I be nothing more than a stranger, a betrayer who didn't deserve his forgiveness? I didn't know. But deep down, I still had a hope, a silent hope that, with time, the pain might fade. And if he decided to forgive me, maybe it would be possible to rebuild what we had broken, even if it was in a different way. Maybe it would be possible, one day, to learn to trust again. But while that didn't happen, I focused on trying to rebuild my own life. And over time, I realized that this healing process wasn't just about him, but about me. I needed to understand who I was, what I had done, and how to move forward. Above all, I needed to forgive myself. And that was my biggest challenge of all. If you connected with this story and feel that stories like this need to be preserved, subscribe to the channel to ensure that memories like these are not forgotten. Let's keep alive the stories of those who suffered, of those who fought, and of those who need their voices heard. Comment below, share your thoughts, share your own experiences. I want to know how you feel, because every story has its value. And if you believe that other stories can touch your heart in the same way, click the link in the description or the pinned comment to explore more emotional tales from our playlist. Together, we can continue this journey of learning and empathy.